everybody. So I want to talk about the changing role of the CTO. And since that's my title, I can feel free to talk about CTOs realistically rather than in an idealized state. So what did it used to be like? I've been in this business a long time, and when you started, many things were much simpler. Architectures were very simple. In fact, when I was first studying computer science, architecture actually meant the structure of the computer chip and how things talk to memory and such. That's what architecture meant. Everything is much more complicated now. And back then, technology was really seen as something that could drive efficiency. And in fact, often you didn't have anybody that you would really consider a CTO. You had a VP of app dev, application development, and you had a big mainframe, and you would walk up and you would present your box of cards to the person standing at the window and hope nothing went horribly wrong. So that's what it used to be like. And things changed a little bit when we started with the technology product revolution. I used to work at a semiconductor company, and lots of the engineers I worked with, they would write these business cases and go off for VC funding. And all of the VCs would come back and tell them, this is a wonderful idea. Come back and talk to me when you know someone and can bring someone on who actually understands business and not just technology. Because at that time, technologists really didn't understand business. They rarely talked to anybody that wasn't a technologist. We got to have our own little languages and all of that, and we got to operate pretty separate from the day-to-day realities of things like customers and balance sheets and all of that. We were technologists. We lived in a world of technologists. I actually knew some. For example, one guy I worked with, he never came in before 4:30 in the afternoon, because they told him he had to at least speak every once in a while to the other people in the department. But he really didn't like people. He didn't like light. And so he had this office with no windows, and he would come in at 4:30 in the afternoon to fulfill his requirement to actually interact with other human beings. And then he would stay until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and make sure he was out before any of those dreaded morning people started coming in. And that was okay. It wasn't even that unusual, and that's what is really frightening. But then things started to change. And because we were locked up in our rooms and didn't really talk to people very much, we didn't always notice that. And I think there's a good argument that roles like a chief digital officer wouldn't exist if chief technology officers had been paying more attention, had been looking that the world is changing, and now technology has to be thought about differently. Backstage, we were just comparing what other T's the T in CTO might stand for. Chief Telling Officer, Chief Talking Officer. I don't have to deliver results, I can just talk about things. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is you're going to do. And in some cases, that was the right thing. If you're trying to build a technology product, just like if you're trying to build an open source product, you need a unified vision. You need someone who can dictate what this thing is going to look like and how it's going to be constructed. That's necessary in those contexts. But if you fast forward to today, many of the organizations that we're dealing with, you can't do that anymore. You have to have a broader perspective, not just about technology, but about business. Ken Beck likes to call this a paint drip person. Some people talk about T-shaped specialists, but I actually think this paint drip metaphor is much more appropriate. If you think about it, unless you're a professional painter, when you put that first strip of paint across, different parts of the paint roll go at different rates, and you never really know which one's going to go farther, which one's going to be fatter. You just know that different things are going to go, and each one of these paint drips you can think about as some other kind of specialization, whether it's the way data might apply to your enterprise, whether it's new approaches to protecting your data from hackers. Each one of these specializations, each one of these paint drips, is a different thing that you might need to learn. And over time, some of them will fade, Some will get overwritten by something else because the paintbrush keeps moving back and forth, creating more paint trips. This is what most technologists need to look like. CTOs need to be like this as well. They can't know everything in detail. It used to be architectures were simple enough that you could actually understand the entire stack. We can't do that anymore. The technology landscape is too complicated. So another thing that CTOs have to learn is that sometimes you can't follow that paint trip all the way down into the weeds like you used to. You have to work with other people who know those internals. CTOs are now in a position where they are more interested in speed to market. How quickly can we adapt? How many experiments can we run on our systems? That doesn't mean we don't have to worry about things like stability. I really don't like the notion of organizing around two-speed IT, but there are different requirements for different kinds of systems and different people who need to work in those environments. The person who's going to take the risk on rolling something out quickly to get some very rapid market feedback from some small group of customers is a very different personality type than someone you want protecting your critical infrastructure. So we have to think about organizing IT differently. Some people do have to worry about stability. A lot more people, though, need to worry about how quickly can we adapt? What can we do to take advantage of the opportunities that's out there? What do we have to do to respond to what our competition just did? So CTOs are more and more top-line focused. You don't want a CTO who is worrying about efficiency. You want a CTO who's worrying about speed to market, who's worrying about experimentation, who's worrying about creativity. You also need a CTO that understands the business. It used to be we didn't care. You could actually move from environment to environment to environment. It didn't matter if it was a manufacturer or a retailer or an accounting firm, because the vast majority of the problems that we solved were the same regardless of industry. That is no longer true. When I started as a computer scientist, there was actually a study that said there are only 14 different programs that will ever be written. 14. And that was true at the time. Yeah, you changed the field names and the layout on the report, but they literally said there are only 14 programs to ever be written. That's not true anymore. You can't go from being a CTO that's heavily involved in a retail, customer-facing, dynamic, we need to make sure this all works, to someone who's going to be the CTO in a fintech. Because that CTO needs to understand the business, needs to learn about the business to be able to help direct how technology is going to allow that business to better satisfy their customers, to increase their top-line revenue, and to protect themselves from all those disruptors like we have on this floor here that want to come through and overturn their business model. It's important, too, for CTOs to collaborate. We don't need one big idea to come from a CTO. We need lots of little ideas that a CTO can help prioritize and can help nurture, or maybe take the idea that came from this guy in the marketing department and combine it with this idea that came from someone on the customer service line, and combine them together and do this little experiment and see how their customers react to it. The kinds of personalities that were the hardcore techies when I started can't live in an environment like that. They get hives if they're surrounded by that number of people. But we have to learn to be more collaborative. We have to learn, not I'm going to tell you exactly how this is going to be built, but I'm going to listen to how you think it should be built, and I'm still going to have to make the decision at the end. But I'm going to be a lot more collaborative and a lot more open to input, because I can't know everything anymore. That means I have to have a broad net of relationships. And I have to be customer-centric. We need to start paying more attention, not just to what it is we want to happen on our balance sheet or on income statement. We don't know where the next revolution in the way our customers are going to expect to interact with us will come from. When Twitter introduces something new or Instagram introduces something new, all of a sudden, the people sitting in the bank are saying, how my customers now expect to interact with me in this way. How can I support that? We have to pay more attention to our customers. And as scary as it sounds to a lot of those old school folks, to some extent we have to experiment on our customers. How are we going to know if something works if we don't try it? No, they may not like it, and so we have to roll it back. But yes, let's be realistic, that is experimenting on our customers. Focus groups don't work anymore. I'm not sure they ever did, but they certainly don't work now. What people will tell you they think they want is very different than what they actually want. So we have to think far more about how we are going to enable the feedback to come from our customers. We need to be able to experiment quickly and safely, be willing to make mistakes, be willing to own up to them, and be willing to find the things that work and move quickly to take advantage of it. We have to care about not just our internal customers, but our external customers. It used to be that the C in CTO meant very little. Sure, you were the chief, but that didn't mean you sat at the big kids' table. Very often, the CTO would report to the CIO, who might report to the COO or the CFO. You were nowhere near the top-level decision-making. That is completely different. CTOs need to be involved in the higher-level business strategy because more and more industries, and in fact, there are very few that aren't anymore, these industries, they are technology industries that happen to specialize in insurance, or in retail banking, or in retail, or in media. We're going to have a seat at the top table, but that means that we can't always just retreat to geek speak. We have to be able to explain why this wonderful technological innovation is going to be so important to our organization, hopefully before some startup makes us redundant within our industry. So the CTO, as we knew it before, is dead. That kind of CTO, the one who locks himself in a room, can't really survive much longer if they're even still around now. But long live the CTO, a CTO that understands what customers want and how technology can be taken advantage of to improve customer value and to improve the way our organizations work. That CTO is alive and well. Thank you very much.